Hey, Stoic warrior, we live in a world where people are constantly trying to prove something. They prove they're right, they prove they're worthy, they over-explain, and sometimes even beg just to feel seen. But the Stoic doesn't operate that way. A Stoic doesn't beg for attention. A Stoic doesn't chase validation. A Stoic doesn't explain himself to the world because he knows silence is strength. Now, think about what most people do when they're hurt, rejected, or misunderstood. They rush. They chase, they try to patch what's broken by explaining themselves to people who already decided not to understand. That right there is weakness disguised as courage. You call someone and they don't answer. You text again. You message again. You pour your heart into a long paragraph, hoping they'll finally see your worth. But here's the truth. The more you explain, the more you beg. The more power you hand away, and that's the opposite of Stoic. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, mastered the art of silence, not because they didn't feel, but because they understood something essential. The more we place value on things outside our control, the less control we actually have. When you chase someone's attention or beg for their understanding, you're surrendering control, essentially saying, "My peace depends on how you respond." But that's not peace, that's a prison. Real strength shows up when someone disrespects you and you walk away without saying a word. Not out of pride, but because your dignity doesn't need to shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It quietly detaches. This silence isn't emptiness. It's discipline. It's self-respect. It's the kind of inner strength that says, "I don't need you to hear me in order to hear myself." And this silence terrifies people, because when you stop reacting, they lose the control they assumed they had over you. So today, let's explore the kind of silence that builds power instead of weakness, the kind that makes people wonder what changed, the kind that lets your absence speak louder than any message ever could. We're going to break down 6 deep truths, 6 reasons silence is a Stoic superpower, and why those who master it never chase, beg, or explain themselves. If you're exhausted from overgiving, if you felt misunderstood, if you've ever chased someone who walked away, this is your moment to shift. Let this be the reminder you didn't realize you needed. Before we dive into the first point, do me one small favor. Like this video if it's already resonating. Drop your thoughts and affirmations in the comments as we go. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more Stoic growth content. And most importantly, don't skip any part, because one idea, one truth, might completely change how you carry yourself going forward. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence is my power. Number 1. Silence makes them feel your absence, not just hear your words. Have you ever noticed something strange? The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop chasing, people suddenly start thinking. That's the paradox of silence. It doesn't push, it pulls. Think about the last time you got hurt. Maybe someone ghosted you, disrespected you, gave you the cold shoulder. Your instinct probably screamed, "Say something, fight back, defend your worth." But here's the thing. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the more they run. The more you explain, the less weight your words carry. But the moment you go silent, they suddenly notice your absence far more than they ever noticed your presence. There's an old line that goes, "Whoever doesn't understand your silence probably won't understand your words either." The Stoics grasped this thousands of years ago because silence unsettles people in ways noise simply can't. When you go quiet with someone who expected you to beg, when you withdraw instead of reacting, you force them to face something deeper, their own behavior. Silence acts like a mirror. It says, "I saw what you did, I felt how you treated me, but I value myself too much to explain that to you." That kind of silence doesn't come from ego. It comes from clarity. You come to realize that if they truly cared, they'd reach out. If they respected you, they'd make the effort. If they were emotionally mature, they wouldn't need a whole paragraph to understand your worth. So you stay quiet, and in that quiet, you reclaim all the power you once gave away. You stop wasting energy trying to be understood by people who don't even understand themselves. You stop trying to heal through conversation because some wounds actually heal better in stillness. And yes, it's uncomfortable because your silence will unsettle them, confuse them, make them wonder, why isn't he reacting? Why didn't she respond? Did they stop caring? That's exactly when the power shifts, because your silence speaks one undeniable truth. You don't owe them an explanation anymore. Number 2. When you stay silent, you hear the truth louder. The world is loud, but silence helps you tune in, not to others, but to yourself. In moments of heartbreak, betrayal, or confusion, most people run to others for advice, validation, or a quick emotional fix. They'll call 5 friends, scroll endlessly through social media, or confront the person who hurt them, hoping the right conversation will somehow fix the wrong person. But the Stoic does something entirely different. He goes quiet, not because he doesn't feel the pain, but because he knows real answers don't come from noise, they come from reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if something external distresses you, the pain isn't from the thing itself, but from your judgment of it. And that judgment can be revoked at any time. When you go truly silent, the mind settles. And once the mind settles, the truth rises to the surface. You start hearing things like, "They never really respected me, I just didn't want to accept it," or "I'm not angry that they left, I'm angry that I stayed too long," or "I don't need closure, I need peace." These truths don't arrive in a text message. They surface in the quiet hours, once you stop explaining and start actually listening. Silence gives you the space to separate your emotions from your values. Because when you're hurt, your emotions scream, chase them, explain yourself, prove your worth. But in silence, your values whisper, protect your dignity, guard your peace, let them go. That's exactly why the Stoics never reacted quickly. They never made decisions in anger. They embraced a kind of sacred stillness, a pause before the storm. Modern culture teaches the opposite. Speak your mind. Tell them how you feel. Don't let anyone disrespect you. But here's what most people miss. You don't earn respect by reacting louder. You earn it by staying grounded in silence while everyone else spirals in noise. The quieter you become, the more people reveal who they truly are. You don't have to ask whether they care. Their actions will show you. You don't have to beg for clarity. The truth surfaces in your stillness, and most importantly, you stop merely reacting to life and start responding with real purpose. Silence isn't passive. It's focused. It's intentional. It's the doorway to inner wisdom most people never actually walk through. So when you're unsure, overwhelmed, or emotionally clouded, don't act. Be still. The answer was never outside you. It's inside, and you'll only hear it in silence. Number 3. Begging for closure is a form of self-betrayal. Let's talk about something people rarely admit. Chasing closure often ends in more pain, not peace. We all crave it. That final explanation, that one honest conversation, the ending that finally feels complete. But here's the harsh truth. If someone truly cared, you wouldn't need to beg for closure. They'd offer it to you with respect. And if they don't, your silence becomes the closure. Epictetus said not to explain your philosophy, but to embody it. This might not seem connected at first, but here's how it applies. The moment you stop chasing closure and start living your values instead, you stop needing other people to validate your pain. The pain itself is real, but needing them to justify why they hurt you means handing them control over your own healing. Here's the cycle: they hurt you. You demand answers. They respond with coldness or avoidance. You feel even worse. And the loop repeats until you finally realize closure was never theirs to give. It's something you give yourself the moment you go quiet and walk away. It's easy to convince yourself, if I just tell them how I feel, or if I explain my side, or if I get one last conversation. But here's what actually happens. You end up talking to someone who already made peace with hurting you. You end up explaining yourself to someone who's already made their decision. You end up burning energy hoping someone else will repair your broken expectations. That isn't closure, that's self-abandonment. The Stoics understood that emotion clouds judgment, especially when ego gets involved. You want to be seen as the reasonable one. You want to be understood. You want them to finally get it. But chasing that betrays your own growth. Real closure looks like this. You recognize that what they gave you was truly the most they had to give. You accept that no amount of explaining will make them more respectful, more loving, or more honest. You stop waiting for a conversation that will never happen. And in that acceptance, your power returns. The people who hurt you don't need to understand your worth. You do. The people who left don't owe you a goodbye. You can say it yourself without a word. The people who ghosted you don't deserve a second chance. Your silence is already their answer. So stop drafting unsent letters. Stop rehearsing the perfect message. Stop chasing closure from people who were never open to begin with. Go silent, and let that silence be the space where your self-respect finally breathes again. Number 4. Silence exposes what words try to hide. The moment you go quiet, something powerful happens. The masks start falling off. Words can be beautiful, but they can also be deceptive. People say what sounds right. They say whatever they think you want to hear. They lean on explanations, justifications, apologies. But silence can't lie. There's a well-known line that says what someone does speaks so loudly you can't hear what they're saying. The Stoics understood this deeply. They never judged a person by their apologies, they judged them by their patterns, and the clearest way to see someone's true pattern is to stop talking and simply watch. Silence isn't passive, it's observant. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you give people room to reveal who they really are, and trust me, they will. The one who genuinely respects you will miss your presence and reach out with honesty. The one who only used you will vanish, because they never valued you to begin with. The one who manipulated you will grow angry or confused, not because you did anything wrong, but because they lost their grip on control. Here's what most people never realize. Words can build illusion, but silence reveals reality. You don't need to confront anyone. You don't need to test them. Just withdraw your words and watch. Watch who checks in when you go quiet. Watch who disappears the moment you stop giving. Watch who grows frustrated when they can't provoke a reaction out of you. That's the truth, brutal but necessary. Sometimes silence hurts more than 1,000 confrontations because people can dismiss your words, but they can't dismiss your absence. They can argue with your opinions, but they can't argue with your stillness. When you stay quiet, you stop feeding their illusion. You stop playing their emotional games. You stop pretending their words carry more weight than their actions. And this kind of silence brings real clarity. You stop needing people to explain why they treated you badly. Because their silence, their distance, their actions already told you everything. You start trusting patterns over promises. You start believing energy over explanations. You begin valuing what's real instead of what's said. That's true Stoicism, not cold, but clear, not distant, but discerning, not emotionless, but emotionally disciplined. So next time someone tries to talk their way back into your life, don't rush to respond. Observe, go silent, and let the truth speak without a single word. Number 5, not explaining yourself is the highest form of confidence. Let's be honest, being misunderstood hurts. You want to defend yourself. You want to explain why you're not what they think. You want to say, that's not who I am. But the Stoic doesn't chase understanding from others. He seeks it within himself. Why? Because explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds isn't confidence, it's fear of being misjudged. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste the time he had left speculating about others unless it served some mutual purpose. Think about that. Every time you try convincing someone of your worth, your goodness, or your loyalty, you're spending your limited time and energy chasing someone else's judgment, and that isn't power, that's insecurity. The person who doesn't explain himself isn't arrogant. He's at peace because he knows his intentions are clean, his actions are aligned, and his value doesn't need translating for people who don't care to understand it. This level of detachment isn't easy. You'll get called cold, labeled selfish, maybe even lose people who once felt close to you. But here's the thing. Losing people who never truly saw you isn't a loss. It's alignment. Here's a truth few want to admit. Most people don't actually want to understand you. They want to control how you're perceived. And when your silence breaks that illusion, they get angry. Not because you hurt them, but because you stop playing their game. The moment you stop explaining, you start leading with your energy instead. You stop justifying your distance. You stop explaining why you walked away. You stop defending your own peace. You simply act, and the people meant to remain in your life will understand that silence without needing subtitles. That kind of energy is rare. It unsettles people. It makes manipulators lose interest. It pushes users away. But the ones who stay respect you deeply because they know you won't shrink your value to accommodate someone else's confusion. That's Stoic silence. Not loud, not desperate, not theatrical, just calm, grounded, unshakable. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. You don't need to convince anyone your boundaries are valid. You don't need to speak your worth into rooms where your silence has already said it all. Number 6. Your detachment in silence is what teaches them the lesson. There's something uniquely powerful about someone who simply chooses to walk away. Not in anger, not in drama, but in quiet detachment. You don't slam the door. You don't send one last emotional message. You simply leave, and in that silence, you teach the lesson no words ever could. Seneca noted that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality, and that's exactly what happens here. The real suffering begins when the mind starts replaying that silence over and over. Once you stop responding, they're left alone with their own thoughts, their guilt, their memory of how they treated you, the echo of your absence. Your detachment says, I no longer need to prove myself to you. I will not stay somewhere. I'm not respected. I've realized peace matters more than connection. Most people don't know how to handle this kind of energy. They're used to people who react, who beg, who fight for closure, who fall apart just to be heard. But when you go silent, you stop playing the emotional game. You exit with dignity, and your silence forces them to face themselves. They expect you to chase, to fight, to stay, to come back. But you don't. And that unsettles them more than any argument ever could, because suddenly they realize they no longer have access to your energy. They've lost the upper hand. They didn't think you'd actually walk away. That's the exact moment the lesson begins. Because people don't learn from words, they learn from distance. They don't change when you demand respect. They change, if they ever do, once your absence makes them realize what they lost. And if they don't, that's fine too. The lesson wasn't for them, it was for you. You learned that your peace doesn't need permission. You learned that not everyone deserves an explanation. You learned that sometimes silence isn't just strength, it's healing. When you detach in silence, you remove yourself from toxic patterns. You stop bleeding in front of people, incapable of understanding your pain. You stop explaining storms to people who've never left their shelter. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your own soul to leave it somewhere it's being neglected. That's exactly why the Stoics were never reactive. They didn't chase justice. They didn't seek validation. They simply let their silence speak for them. You don't have to announce, I'm done. You can just be done. That's real power, and that's the kind of silence that unsettles anyone who thought they had control over you. So don't be afraid to detach. Go quiet, and let them sit in the space where your voice used to be. If you've made it this far, you already feel it. There's a shift happening inside you, a quiet realization, a truth you've always known but maybe forgot along the way. You don't have to chase, beg, or explain yourself to be worthy. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to prove your side to be understood. You don't have to break your own peace just to keep someone else comfortable. That's the foundation of Stoicism. It's not about coldness, it's about clarity. It's not about detachment from love, it's about detachment from chaos. The Stoics taught us something powerful. That silence isn't weakness, it's control. It's the refusal to burn energy on what's beneath you. It's the confidence to know your presence holds value even when it's gone. There will always be moments where your emotions want to take over, where you'll feel the urge to explain, to fight, to prove yourself. But in those moments, remember this. Your silence might not win the argument, but it will win yourself back. Because every time you choose not to react, you build inner peace. Every time you walk away quietly, you build self-worth. Every time you keep your dignity intact, you build a kind of power that can't be taken from you. And if there's one thing to carry from this entire video, it's this. Let your silence be your final word. Not out of ego, not out of spite, but out of deep, unshakable self-respect. Thank you for watching. If this hit home, like it now. Share it with someone you know is ready to grow. Drop your affirmations in the comments. Your voice matters here. And subscribe for more Stoic truth every week. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. My silence is my last word, and my most powerful one.